cricket season is up and running, and after all the excitement of sleepless nights and waiting for the county championship to start, we are off and running. But like Banquo's ghost, the spectre of the 100 is lurking in the backdrop. So while we enjoy the traditional summer sound of leather on willow, or leather on stump in my case, cricket played in whites with a red ball is fantastic, all well and good, but the 100 just doesn't seem to go away. Joining me is HUW TURBERVILL, who's written a really good piece in The Cricketer, which I'm sure those of you who subscribe may have already read it. But it was to do with noises coming out about financing in the game, which seems to be the backbone of the idea of the 100. Let's just chuck one in there, HUW. I'll bowl one out the back of the hand just to get us going. Does cricket in England need huge financing? Is it so precarious that it needs it?
No, I think it could sort of go on without it. I would like to see it go on without it, but then am I a romantic traditionalist living in the past? I don't know, whatever my good friend Don Topley and other people want to call me, but I think it would go on, wouldn't it? I think there's no doubt, I can't deny that sort of a handful of counties, 7 counties, I don't know, could do with, they probably feel they could do with some money. Sam Morshead wrote a brilliant piece in The Cricketer one issue back. We called it the County MOT, saying that 5 counties received advance payments from the ECB because they were having trouble. And you know, I've in my article I said, you know, that Leicestershire have got 2 million debt there, 2 million to the council. Glamorgan owe 1.8 million to the council. I mean, we know Yorkshire owe the Colin Graves Trust 15 million at least. Some say 22 million. So there's no doubt that, you know, if you and I, Darren, were offered money in the street or whatever, we'd always please. You know, I mean, I just feel there's fundamental issues at stake here, as opposed to a quick financial fix, as George Bell calls it, a get rich quick scheme, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Ponzi and all that. But so yeah, I mean, they're going for the get rich quick scheme, or not a get rich, but they're going for the sticky plaster solution, I think.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because this week Derbyshire released figures and they remain debt-free. They're a bit of an anomaly in the current environment.
Well, yeah, but they were one of the counties that didn't take the sort of invite from the ECB back in the day. He was chairman, Jes Clark, I suppose. They were looking to expand the test venues, weren't they? So Cardiff and Durham became test venues, and they spent a lot of money doing up the ground. And Yorkshire spent a lot of money doing up the ground because they felt they had to keep up with Durham and the like. So in a way, the kind of those test venues, I mean, Lancashire have got big debt, Warwickshire have got big debt. They're looking to extend the debt even more because they're going to build a hotel. So it really, in a way, kind of Derbyshire, Sussex, Essex, we're talking smaller figures, aren't we? And we're talking, you know, keep your house in order kind of thing, aren't we? You know, I mean, Essex who are close to our heart, you know, have concerts, or I think they do, don't they? I mean, I've not been to a concert at Essex, but I'm sure they do. But they certainly have hosted women's internationals, haven't they? So it's smaller numbers, and it's just sort of balancing the books, isn't it? The other thing is COVID, of course, as well. I mean, so you said, do they need the money? And I suppose you could argue that COVID really sort of damaged them. Without COVID, you know, I think we'd have been okay. But it is all subjective, isn't it? I mean, whether they need it or not, really. I mean, it's, you know, it depends what your own take on it is.
Well, you mentioned Jes Clark. Younger listeners might wonder who he is or was, but he will, in my mind, will be forever associated with Alan Stanford and the Stanford Millions, which again was well, it actually was a get-rich-quick Ponzi scheme
He
and
literally,
ended in complete disaster. But there was also a huge embarrassment. And ever since then, I've always been a bit uncomfortable with associating cricket with big money in the way that football seems to be quite happily comfortable doing so. It just doesn't sit right with me in the genteel world of cricket.
yeah, I think George Bell again has written in the cricketer, why do we have to follow football? Let's just be brave. Let's just do our own thing. I mean, there's a couple of points there. I mean, yeah, so you're saying about Giles Clark. I mean, ultimately, he was responsible as well for giving cricket entirely to Sky, taking it off terrestrial. Um, and then the reasons behind Stanford were that he didn't want to sort of toady up to the Indian authorities, BCCI, and didn't want it to be dictated to by them. So he did this alternative thing with Stanford, which was an absolute mirage, disaster, a Ponzi scheme, ripping off American pensioners. I mean, the shamelessness of it all, really. No heads rolled after that with ECB at all. They just carried on, absolutely brazen, weren't they? I mean, a different time, isn't it? I mean, when you think about sort of politicians in the 80s, 90s, Alistair Clark Campbell sort of, if you're still in the news 7 days later, you're toast or whatever. But no, they just carried on after this absolute Stanford shameful debacle. But yeah, do we have to follow football? Do we have to do the same as them? And I like football, and I'm a Liverpool fan and Ipswich, but Liverpool fan Tom Hicks and George Gillette, look what they did to Liverpool, leverage buyout. The Glazers did it on an even bigger scale and still getting away with it at Manchester United. Di Young, the owner of Reading, tried to flog the training ground to Wycombe Wanderers the other day. I think he's being thwarted at the moment. But does cricket need this? I don't know. I mean, you've got your kind of alleged sports washers at the top of Man City, Newcastle, but I mean, Man City, to be fair, the owners have done a hell of a job rejuvenating that area of Manchester. That it's not all bad, is it? But it's certainly a mixed bag, isn't it? Football owners.
Yeah, yeah. It's all. I mean, I think in both cases, it's all about the sort of the heart and soul of the sport. Just going back to Giles Clark, there, you just made me think that he was acting to try and spite the BCCI and the Indian influence. And if we wind the clock back 20 years, the ECB invented T20 cricket, the 2020 Cup, as it was charmingly called in the old days. India grabbed the ball and ran with it and set up the IPL. And it just strikes me that ever since then, the ECB have just been trying to play catch up. So the whole thing, as you said, with getting in bed with Alan Stanford to try and seize the narrative. Is this history repeating itself with the 100 that, again, they're trying to create something to thwart the Indians? Is that what's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, we sort of professionalized T20, didn't we? But I don't think we invented. Yeah, I mean, I know what you're saying, but we didn't invent it because I mean, you and I don't know. I played 15 or 8 ball overs in Suffolk in the 90s, so that kind of midweek cricket had been around for a long time. But a guy called Stuart Robertson was in charge at that time at the ECB of this particular thing and invented this T20 Cup, and we didn't patent it, did we? English cricket didn't patent it, and as you say, others, CPL, IPL, PSL, went off and did a big thing with it. And we're seen to sort of be behind them because we've got 18 teams, heaven forbid, and they've got 8, and that's all the elite tournament of an 8-team tournament. So that's one of the reasons why we invented the 100. All very complicated, isn't it? Because we then made it 100 balls for various reasons. One of which was to let T20 stay with the counties. One of which was to have something shorter for the BBC. Yeah, we've tried to be innovative about the 100. It hasn't really taken off. I don't think any other major leagues of any description are using the format, so it hasn't been the big sort of money spinner. I'm sure it will go back to T20, won't it? God, so it's so complicated, isn't it? So apparently, Richard Gould, the chief executive of the ECB, wants more than 8 teams, wants to spread it around a bit, and there's talk of Durham and Somerset coming in. There's also talk of a third London team. There might be sort of 10 teams, 12 teams. If there's 12 teams, it leaves the 6 out, doesn't it? Like Sussex, Derbyshire, um, Worcestershire, So I can't remember what your question was, Darren, really, after rambling on for about 6 minutes there.
I think I was just trying to say that is the ECB continually playing catch up, that all these things are coming along. It seems
Yeah,
to be India right across the board these days. India are calling the shots.
I
And
don't think,
ECB,
I don't think they're trying to defy India anymore. I think there's an acceptance that India are the top dogs, and I think the talk now is of making the second best T20 tournament behind the IPL. So I don't know. I think that there's absolutely. Tom Harrison, the ECB chief exec, who was, and Richard Gould. I don't think. No, I don't think they're trying to defy India anymore. I mean, they're trying to be innovative. I mean, with the 100, they tried to create something that was going to be a money spin for them, because I think they're wary of putting all their eggs in one basket with the Sky TV deal, and they don't think that money's going to last forever. I think it's 1.1 billion deal between 2020 and 2024, and then Tom Harrison extended it as he was
28.
leaving. 28. There's even something about 2031, isn't there? I think. No, I'm
It'll
not
be an
sure.
extension clause, yeah.
Yeah, test cricket at home, or whether that's at major tournaments, but certainly 2028. So Richard Gould and Richard Thompson didn't have any room to manoeuvre because they'd inherited this new agreement as Tom Harrison did it as he was going out the door. Although somebody said Richard Thompson did know about it, I don't know. But yeah, they're always looking for, obviously, for money and money spinners, and not just relying on Sky Money.
Format, you said, and I think it's widely known that the 100 was invented as a format to suit TV companies. But I mean, would it really make so much of a difference to broadcasters to switch it to a T20, a traditional T20 format, keep everything else the same if you want, keep the franchise, keep the names and whatever else, but just make it T20 as opposed to this 100 ball game?
I mean, the BBC denied that they demanded that it be 2.5 hour slot. And there's talk, whether the ECB preempted the BBC, did something that they thought the BBC would like. I still think you can play T20 in a 2.5 hour slot by having, say, 5 overs from one end. Even 10 overs from one end. Like I've played midweek cricket where you play 10 overs from one end.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not so much fun for the spectator, I suppose. But yes, I think you can play T20 in a 2.5 hour slot, definitely.
Well, one thing that's undeniable about the 100 is it has brought in a new audience, and you touch upon this in your article. And it strikes me that this audience are cricket newbies. They wouldn't really be bothered so much about the detail of this, the format, whether it's 10 overs from one end and 10 overs from the other end. They're there for the occasion. They're there to eat hot dogs, watch fireworks, listen to hip and trendy DJs playing hip and trendy sounds. And the cricket is there as a kind of an entertainment. To me, it's a bit like going to the 100 is a bit like doing a Jaeger bomb shot, as opposed to having a lovely glass of claret that is county championship cricket. So fiddling with the format, moving it to a T20 would, I think, go unnoticed by this new crowd.
Yeah, I don't think it would be destructive. As you say, I think I spent a lot of time thinking about the appeal of the 100, and I've talked to a lot of people and never quite got to the bottom of it all. But a friend of mine, for instance, who I met the other day, takes his 2 daughters, and I wrote about this. I don't know if you read it, but I just
I read all your stuff.
What is it though? Is it because it's new? Is it because it's this? Is it because it's that? And he couldn't quite sort of define what it was. I mean, I can imagine it's nice for fans that they were at the start. So, can be a bit daunting, sort of. But then this doesn't affect like Liverpool, Man United, or Arsenal, or Spurs, but I can imagine it a bit daunting. Oh God, cricket! The county championship went about 1888 or whatever. And all that history. Oh, it's daunting, isn't it? So I can imagine it must be quite nice to be at the start of something, the genesis, of a team, or the Oval Invincibles or whatever. So I can imagine that, yeah. And I think that, girls like that. There's the women's team plays first, then the boys, and the men's and boys. I'm sure boys like it as well. But yeah, it's the women and the men in the same kit, and they've got the kit, and they're there from the start. And as you say, there's all the other stuff. Although Tanya Aldred wrote a piece in the magazine saying we should get rid of the fireworks for environmental reasons, but um, DJs. I mean, but then you could have all that at the blast, couldn't you? And Surrey didn't need 100, did they? I mean, they had the blast. They sold out the blast. It was never what Surrey needed. In fact, Richard Thompson and Richard Gould said they didn't want it, did they? And they appear to have changed their tune now, with their hat on, sort of representing all 18 counties. So some counties need it more than others. I mean, they're very keen on it in Cardiff, aren't they? The Glamorgan hierarchy talk about it a lot, which is, I imagine, reasonably galling for Glamorgan fans. But yeah, different parts of the country. Durham seem keen on it. You mentioned, I think, Tim Bostock, didn't you? But yeah, I wrote an article about him the other day, didn't I?
Yeah,
Tim, CEO of Durham, called somebody Luddites, didn't he? I think people interpret it as calling county fans Luddites. I think, reading between the lines, Durham are a private club, as are Northampton, as are Hampshire, and I think Tim Bostock was saying that his model of people like him making executive decisions is great, and the other counties who are members led are Luddites, I think. But
yeah,
this business, insulting county fans isn't the way to go, really, is it? It's a bit sort of Gerald Ratner, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, it was using language like that was always going to grab the headlines rather than the underlying
Yeah,
piece. I think probably what he's saying does hold some weight, because if you are beholden to members, and when we look now, I've been to loads of AGMs, and it's always the same people that turn up. The majority of members don't bother; they don't come, but you'll still get the same. Now, he used the word activists or Luddites. I'd probably be a bit more nuanced and say troublemakers that are there. I went to the Essex AGM. I'll give you an example. I went to the Essex AGM in December. Now, Essex have got, or have had, a lot on their plate over the last few years, which they've been dealing with it and been dealing with it admirably. And then when it came to questions from the floor, the very first question was from a member who wanted to know why the Christmas tree lights weren't switched on. And given that it's Christmas time, we should be having all the lights switched on. Um, and it kind of demonstrated a kind of mentality amongst certain factions of county memberships that are just obsessed with things that aren't really part of the bigger picture. And it's always, and wherever I've been to an AGM, and I'm sure you've been to loads as well, it's that kind of character that turns up. The vast majority of sensible members that are quite happy to go along and watch the cricket and do very little else stay away. But if they were involved more, then it would probably negate the effect of these kind of troublemakers.
yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it just so happens that on the bigger picture, sort of, I'm with the members. I mean, I don't want a diminishment of red ball cricket. I mean, I'd probably say there's 14 rounds of county championship at the moment. I'm prepared to compromise and say, okay, let's have 12. Although I get it at the neck for that, because people say, oh, you're giving in again. You've
Yeah.
given in. It was 18, now it's 16, 14. Now you're saying 12. What will it be next? 10? No, it's 8 in New Zealand. So I get it in the neck. But I mean, I probably would accept 12 rounds of county championship as long as they're played, through the summer and what have you. I do accept, that the argument about bowlers' workloads and Don Topley telling everybody, us that bowlers are finely tuned racehorses. I mean, I take it all on board, So, but I hear what you're saying. I mean, that is ridiculous about the Christmas tree lights. There's bigger things, bigger fish to fry. But I think I'm generally with the members in the sense that I don't want a diet of just T20, and I want red ball cricket to be saved. And I think it's a false economy, because actually Test cricket is still the number one. It still represents the lion's share of the TV deal with Sky, and I think to destroy, ruin hurt the county championship even more than they've done already. I mean, look at England's tour to India. I mean, 7 or 8 county championship matches in April, May. I mean, that it just leaves England ill-equipped to go out and bowl spin and play spin in India, didn't it?
Yeah, yeah. And I just sort of look at it, this time of year, the palpable sense of excitement for the start of the county championship, which even builds further when England's first test looms into view. I know we've got to wait a little while for that still, but those for me are moments of genuine excitement in the world of cricket. I don't feel that from any white ball tournament, wherever it is. I don't feel people getting revved up about the Vitality Blast. I don't get people getting excited and sleepless nights ahead of the 100. And that was one of the things, I always had this view that we didn't need the 100. And it was, you touched on it just then, that, all of the marketing and the bells and whistles could have been applied to the Blast, and it would have just taken it even to another level of success that it already had. But then I get shouted down saying that the whole thing about the 100, why it wouldn't work with a revamped Blast, is that the Blast takes too long. It's too big, it's too bloated. And the beauty of the 100, and I think this is one of Don Topley's arguments, is it's a smaller amount of teams. A different game is played every night, and it's all over within 3.5, 4 weeks. And that's why it's successful.
Yeah, I mean, I accepted before that we needed 8-team tournament. An alternative could have been 2 divisions, Premier League of 8, lower tier of 10. The 8 big counties are loath to do that because they don't want to let smaller counties in with supposedly inferior facilities. But I accepted all that. But it's just everything about it has been a disaster, hasn't it? The launch of it was appalling. It was sneaked out. Oh, we're thinking about doing 100 ball. What? It's T20. Some of the names don't work for me, if I'm honest. But maybe, hey, I'm 51 and I'm a dinosaur. I don't know. But the whole thing about it has just sort of been tacky and chintzy, and it just hasn't worked for me. But hey, it works for some, and I don't know. But
Well, I don't feel any investment in any of that. And there are two, it's non-stop now. One franchise tournament follows another. It's the same players just wearing different shirts. They don't seem to be involved, therefore the viewer isn't involved. It's all about the advertising and the broadcasting. They're playing in front of sparsely populated stadiums, but as long as the cameras are there and they're all wearing the right shirts, and let's stop for a PG tips break, that it goes on. But cricket with real meaning to me remains county championship and test matches where you feel involved, you feel an attachment. And I don't know, are we looking at a world in the future where there are just 2 different codes of cricket in the way that rugby's gone?
yeah, it might well be, mightn't it? Which would cricket, red ball cricket be? Or supposed to be like rugby league, a bit more sort of minority, I guess, wouldn't it, compared to rugby union?
Well,
But
I'd put it the other way around. I think rugby union is a more traditional form. I think,
yeah, well, traditional, yeah, but I can't. Yeah, I don't want to talk red ball cricket down, but I mean, I suppose the T20 audience is. We can't deny it's bigger, can we?
yeah, yeah,
And
and
it's
younger.
domestic cricket anyway. But I mean, I suppose again, it goes back to that false economy that Test cricket is still very popular over here, and TV deal, big crowds, hospitality, blah 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 blah. So yeah, compare a Test match to a T20, it doesn't pale in comparison, does it? But yeah, no, it could be, couldn't it? I mean, it's still, I suppose, it's a bit depressing that Tom Banton, Phil Salt, Joss Butler would go off and do a different sport, wouldn't it? Pat Brown, whoever. But I mean, it's a bit sad, isn't it? If there was a breaking of the codes, dividing of the codes, as you say, that 100 players would go off and we'd never see them again in red ball cricket, even in Test cricket. But it does. I mean, yes, a lot of people are saying that it does seem inevitable. Yes.
I think the thing that would change that is if more money, and we're back to the square one with this, came into county cricket and red ball cricket. And I think you touch on this in your article that if we are going to have foreign investment, if we are going to have big corporate investment in the game, if you're going to invest in counties, you invest in the counties as a whole across all formats. You know, your investment encompasses not only the white ball stuff, but the red ball stuff as well. And maybe that's a
Oh,
way to try
yeah.
and preserve the
Is
standards.
that me being romantic, Darren? I don't know. I got laughed at, didn't I, by Toppers about that one?
Well, that's no big shame. That's
I don't know. I don't
joking,
know.
Don, joking.
I know. It's only good
But
fun,
I mean,
but
I think that's the thing. Maybe we are romantics. Maybe we are all of a certain age, and in 30, 40 years' time, we'll be gone, and it will be left to the youngsters that grew up on a diet of crash bang wallop, or whatever you want to call it.
yeah,
Um,
I mean, are Indian cement companies going to invest in the county championship? Probably not. I don't know, but are they going to invest in a sort of 5 or 6 week 100? You know, I think, people said to me, accept the argument, and this is what that article was about. Over the Easter weekend, I sort of thought about it, and I accept why some counties want the money.
yeah.
I feel they need the money. I don't like it, but I accept it.
Well, no one likes being in debt today. Let's end on something on a more positive note. What are you looking forward to in the 2024 English season?
Oh, we're looking forward to going to as many test matches as I can against, well, potentially a resurgent West Indies and a resurgent Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka was bashed Bangladesh, but comprehensively beat Bangladesh. And West Indies, of course, had that thrilling win at the Gabba against
Mm,
Australia. So the Test series will be good. And yeah, and I'm looking forward to getting my county championship campaign off and running. I hope to see you at Chelmsford, um, there at some stage, and
yeah.
Hove, Canterbury, and the Oval, and all my beloved places. And I hope everybody's got their fixture wall chart from the April edition of the Cricketer magazine out now.
Yes.
Famous the wall chart. And they're planning their campaign. So yeah,
Getting the sunscreen ready because in this country you're allowed to take sunscreen into a stadium.
yeah. What was that World Cup? Wasn't it? You were banned from it or something? God.
Well, I look forward to catching up with you. I look forward to an exciting season of red ball and white ball cricket. Yeah, I will see you at Chelsea. I might even see you at East Hangingfield and Great Bursting Cricket Club. How about
Yeah, sounds good, Darren. Yeah.
that? All right, Hugh, many thanks for chatting. Always good to catch up. And yes, I will remind everyone, if they haven't already done so, to get your April edition of the Cricketer complete with the absolutely essential wall chart. Unmissable.